As I read about the next dog, Rex, think about how this dog is different from Dirk. After we read today, I'll ask you to write a paragraph describing Rex's day. Be alert to details. He's a busy dog. Rex, the farm dog. They are all there in my memory, a host of them from farms I worked on when I was a boy. They all seem to be some kind of collie, cross with longish hair and bright eyes, and all seem to be named Rex or King or Spot or Lad or Jim. They worked the farms. It was tempting to call them family dogs or family pets because they were that as well, something the small children could roll around with, something to love and be loved, something to greet in the morning, but they were more. I cannot count the number of times I have been sitting in a truck waiting for a combine hopper to fill. A boy 13, 14 years old on a hot August afternoon with an old collie dog sitting in the seat beside me. You could talk to them and they would listen. I'd tell them all of my dreams, my problems, girls, endless talk of girls. As I sat there in the hot sun chewing on a straw, ruffling a dog's ears and watching the combine rumble around the golden field. They became in some way more than another person could be, perfect companions, and it bothered me that I didn't know all of how they lived, only saw them at odd times during the day. Gary Paulson thinks some dogs are perfect companions. What do you think he meant by that? Pause the video and take a moment and think of that, please. One morning when we were rained out and couldn't work in the fields, I decided to follow the farm dog around through his day. His name was Rex, and he was a large collie type, slightly overweight, with a white ruff and thick gold hair matted here and there with burrs, all the colors smudged liberally with fresh green cow manure he'd rolled in just that morning in the back of the barn. They loved the smell of fresh manure on their backs and the sides of their necks. This particular farm had 9 milk cows, 3 pigs, a pen of calves, a couple of Palomino ponies for 2 daughters who would someday be old enough to ride them, a coop full of chickens, and perhaps 500 acres under cultivation. I walked out in the morning after a quick cup of coffee and made my way to the barn with the farmer, a stooped man named Warren, to begin milking. There was already a light mist that would be rain, and as soon as we were out of the yard carrying buckets to the barn, Rex was off like a shot in the haze into the direction of the pasture. He did not need to be told, but ran to where the cows were, went around them several times to form them up with a couple of gentle nips, got them heading for the barn. I have read somewhere that the reason dogs work stock is that the wolf in them is still strong, and the herding instinct is a perversion of the hunting drive that moves wolves. It sounds like a tidy theory, but having watched Rex and the dogs like him work animals, I don't think it can be right. Every move they make is concerned with the care for the animals they are herding, not with hunting, not with killing them. I have seen wolves course and kill, and there is nothing similar about their actions. Rex ran ahead of the cows, then behind, keeping them in a group and watching out for anything that could bother them. When they reached the barn, he stopped driving them and waited patiently for each cow, and they most decidedly did not hurry to step into the barn and work her way to her stall before he would signal the next one in. All of this done without a word from Warren. There was business in it, of course. It was work and important, but there was affection as well. Rex obviously liked the cows, and Warren told me that Rex slept with them in the winter, curling up next to a cow in the barn to stay warm and cozy. I could see why Rex looked at them. It was with more than business in his eyes. When the cows were all in their stalls and being milked, Rex went to the head of the barn and sat by the door waiting. I was not certain what he was waiting for until Warren poured some milk into an old pail lid and put it down, and the cats materialized from the loft and other parts of the barn and began to drink. I had no idea there were so many cats. They seemed to come from everywhere. Rex watched them eat, and when one kitten kept getting pushed away from the crowded pan, Rex used his nose to make a slot for the kitten and pushed it into place with another nudge. He watched them until they had devoured the milk, a matter of moments, and then turned and left the barn, trotting out into the rain. I followed him. He went to the pig pen and stood looking at the pigs for a moment, then the calf pen, where he stopped. I know it sounds far-fetched, but he seemed to study each calf individually, or perhaps he was counting them. From there he went to the chicken coop. Here he paused and turned. He had seen me following him at a distance, and he looked at me and wagged his tail and started for me. But I turned as if to walk back into the barn, and he returned to the chicken yard. I stopped behind a corner and watched him go around the wired-in yard several times as he studied the fence, looking for holes. When he was satisfied, he trotted to the corral that held the 2 ponies, and when they were clearly all right, he came back into the barn. The whole route had taken 10 minutes. He sat for a moment near the empty milk pan, then stood and walked up and down the barn several times, looking at each cow from the rear. That finished, he turned and went in front of them, walking back and forth in the narrow slot in front of the manger, and studied each cow as she chewed on her hay. It never really ended. I thought that with his rounds done, he would relax. Instead, he started over. The pig pen, the calf pen, and this time he spent more time on the chicken yard, carefully smelling along the base of the wire at one side. At one point in particular, he nosed the dirt, snuffing the mud slightly. When he returned to the barn, I went to that spot and saw the fresh tracks of a skunk that must have tried to get into the pen during the night. The next night, Rex would catch the skunk trying to get to the chickens again and kill it in a battle that left the mauled body of the skunk by the granary and the entire barnyard so thick and stink it was hard to walk through it. Once more in the barn, Rex sat for a moment. He was sitting there when I came in to help finish the chores. In a moment, he moved to the wooden manger in front of the cows. This time he climbed the crude ladder to the hayloft until his head was just up in the loft. He stood there for a moment, then went down the ladder and up and down the line of cows one more time, front and rear, then outside to check the other stock. He didn't stop his circling route until we were done with milking. Then he escorted the cows out of the barn, not pushing them, but simply walking along with them, and took them back out to the pasture. "He doesn't just leave them in the back of the barn?" I asked Warren. "Who? Oh, the dog?" His wife had told me the dog's name was Rex. I never heard Warren say his name, just the dog, but spoken in soft terms with deep affection and care. Even when he called Rex, he simply said, "Come here, dog," always soft and gentle. "Oh, no, he'll take them out to where the grass is good so they can graze. There's no grass in the back of the barn." "He knows that? To take them to the grass?" Warren looked at me. "Sure, why not?" "But how could he know that? Did you teach him?" Warren shook his head. "Not me. The cows. He watches the cows. They taught him." I knew then, and I know now, people who would not be able to learn that. I was skeptical that a dog could learn such things. I was very young and had not yet known dogs like Josh and Cookie, but by the end of the day, I would not have been surprised to hear that Rex had learned to read. Is the author being truthful about a dog learning to read? Sometimes an author exaggerates just to make a point. With milking done, we went back to the house for a quick bite after breakfast of raw fried potatoes, a bit of venison, rhubarb sauce, and fresh rolls. Rex did not come in the house. He never came in. But Warren's wife, Emily, took him a plate of meat and potato scraps as he waited on the porch. I watched him through the kitchen window. He didn't relax. From where he sat on the porch, he kept watching the farmyard, the stock pens, the cows out in the pasture. I thought of pictures I'd seen of lions in Africa surveying the veld. His ruff made a wonderful mane, and he maintained control until the girls awakened and came out to play. They were young, 3 and 5, and when it rained, they stayed mostly on the open porch, with forays into the yard for toys they'd left out. The minute they went outside, they came under Rex's control. On the porch, he sat near them, watching them play, sometimes reaching over with a paw to move a toy and laugh and wag his tail. When one of the girls left the porch, he would move with her, staying always on the outside to contain her, and as soon as she'd picked up the toy she'd gone after, he would gently guide her back to the play area. All day, or nearly all day, he stayed with the children. When the girls went in for lunch, Rex took the time to patrol the yard again. And I noted that when one of the girls went near the pig pen, she was never closer than 15 yards, Rex stopped her and used his shoulders to physically move her back to the house. At intervals throughout the day, he would take moments, never more than 1 or 2 minutes, to make a quick run of the yard and the stock to make sure it was all doing well, but the rest of the time he watched the children. He didn't just sit with them or doze by them or stand near them. He literally watched them. He played with them as well, but he was truly working the whole time, and his eyes rarely left them. "Isn't he a caution?" Emily said, noticing me watching Rex. "It's like having a nanny for them. When I'm gone visiting with them, he stays with Warren and follows the tractor in the fields, but anytime the girls are here, he's with them. It's so nice. There are so many things to worry about on a farm." It made a very full day. When we milked at night, Rex ran for the cows, circled the yard, and took care of all his business. When supper was done and it was getting dark, I looked through the window expecting to see him sleeping or at least lying down. He was sitting on the porch, the evening sunlight and breeze catching his hair, his eyes open and calm, watching the yard, the pens and stock. While I looked, he stood, trotted off around the yard one more time before dark, then came back to the porch to sit again, always at work. How can you tell that Rex likes his job as a farm dog? Please pause the video and think about that. For your written response today, you're going to write a paragraph describing Rex's day. Include details you've learned from this chapter in our book.